A strong mind is like a fortress that has been built stone by stone, thought by thought, decision by decision. It doesn't happen overnight, and it certainly doesn't happen by accident. It's the result of deliberate, consistent effort to take charge of the one thing you have complete control over in this world, your thinking. And when you truly understand this, when you really grasp the magnitude of this power, you'll never be the same again. Let me tell you what I mean by a strong mind. I'm not talking about being stubborn or hard-headed. I'm not talking about being closed to new ideas or refusing to listen to others. I'm talking about developing the mental discipline to think for yourself, to question what others accept without thinking, to stand firm in your convictions while remaining open to growth and learning. A strong mind is one that has been trained like a muscle to perform when it matters most. The first characteristic of a strong mind is that it refuses to be a victim of circumstances. You see, weak minds are constantly looking for someone or something to blame. The economy, the government, their upbringing, their boss, their spouse, the weather. They've got 1,000 reasons why their life isn't working, and not one of them points back to themselves. But a strong mind takes full responsibility. It says, I may not be able to control what happens to me, but I can absolutely control how I respond to what happens to me. This is where most people get uncomfortable. They don't want to hear that they're responsible for their results. They want to believe that success is about luck, that failure is about circumstances, that their life is determined by forces beyond their control. But deep down they know the truth. And when they encounter someone who has embraced this truth, someone who has stopped making excuses and started making progress, it makes them incredibly uncomfortable. It forces them to confront their own choices, their own responsibility, their own potential. A strong mind understands that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom and our power to choose our response. This is profound, my friends. Most people react. They don't respond, they react. Something happens, and automatically, without thinking, they have an emotional outburst. They make a hasty decision. They fall into old patterns. But a strong mind has learned to pause, to think, to choose the response that serves their goals and values rather than just releasing tension or emotion. This kind of mental discipline doesn't develop overnight. It's built through small, consistent choices. Every time you choose to respond rather than react, you're building mental strength. Every time you choose to think long-term rather than give in to immediate gratification, you're building mental strength. Every time you choose to focus on solutions rather than problems, you're building mental strength. And over time, these small choices compound into an unshakable inner fortress. The second characteristic of a strong mind is that it feeds on the right influences. You cannot build mental strength while surrounding yourself with mental weakness. You cannot develop disciplined thinking while constantly exposing yourself to undisciplined thoughts and ideas. The mind is like a garden, and you must be very careful about what seeds you allow to be planted there. A strong mind is selective about its inputs. It chooses books that challenge and elevate rather than entertainment that numbs and diminishes. It seeks out conversations with people who are growing and building rather than complaining and tearing down. It listens to ideas that expand possibilities rather than excuses that limit them. This isn't about being arrogant or thinking you're better than others. It's about recognizing that your mind is your most valuable asset, and like any valuable asset, it must be protected and carefully maintained. This is another reason why strong minds make others uncomfortable. When you start being selective about what you read, what you watch, who you spend time with, some people will notice. They'll call you arrogant. They'll say you think you're too good for them. They'll try to pull you back down to their level. Why? Because your growth reminds them of their stagnation. Your progress highlights their excuses. Your standards make their lack of standards obvious. But a strong mind doesn't apologize for its standards. It understands that average is not a worthy goal, that mediocrity is not a destination worth pursuing, that settling for less than your potential is a tragedy. It understands that you become like the people you spend the most time with, that you rise or fall to the level of your associations, that your network determines your net worth, not just financially, but in every area of life. The third characteristic of a strong mind is that it has learned to master its emotions rather than be mastered by them. Now, I'm not suggesting that strong people don't feel emotions. That would be inhuman. What I'm saying is that they don't let their emotions make their decisions for them. They feel the fear, but they act anyway. They experience the disappointment, but they keep moving forward. They acknowledge the anger, but they don't let it drive their behavior. This emotional mastery comes from understanding a fundamental truth: emotions are visitors, not residents. They come and they go, but decisions made in the heat of emotion often create consequences that last much longer than the emotion itself. A strong mind has learned to step back, to observe emotions without being controlled by them, to wait for clarity before making important choices. Most people are prisoners of their moods. If they feel good, they make progress. If they feel bad, they make excuses. Their productivity, their relationships, their entire lives are at the mercy of how they happen to feel on any given day. But a strong mind has broken free from this prison. It has learned to act based on commitment rather than mood, on principles rather than feelings, on long-term goals rather than momentary impulses. This emotional stability is deeply threatening to those who live at the mercy of their emotions. When they see someone who can stay calm in crisis, who can remain focused under pressure, who can make rational decisions when everyone else is panicking, it challenges their entire worldview. It suggests that they too could have this kind of stability if they were willing to do the work to develop it. The fourth characteristic of a strong mind is that it thinks independently. It doesn't accept ideas just because they're popular or reject them just because they're unpopular. It evaluates ideas based on their merit, their truth, their usefulness. It asks hard questions. It challenges assumptions. It refuses to go along with the crowd when the crowd is heading in the wrong direction. Independent thinking is perhaps the rarest commodity in our world today. Most people think they think, but what they're really doing is rearranging their prejudices. They absorb ideas from their environment without question, repeat opinions they've heard without examination, and follow trends without consideration of where those trends lead. They mistake information for knowledge, opinions for wisdom, and popular beliefs for truth. But a strong mind digs deeper. It asks, is this true? How do I know this is true? What evidence supports this idea? What are the consequences of believing this? Who benefits if I accept this without question? These are uncomfortable questions because they require effort, they challenge convenience, and they often lead to conclusions that aren't popular. When you develop this kind of independent thinking, you become dangerous to those who profit from people's mental laziness. You become a threat to those who want you to accept their version of reality without question. You become scary to those who are comfortable with the status quo because you refuse to leave well enough alone when well enough isn't good enough. The fifth characteristic of a strong mind is that it has learned the power of focus. In a world of infinite distractions, the ability to concentrate your mental energy on what matters most is like having a superpower. While others scatter their attention across 1,000 trivial pursuits, a strong mind has learned to identify what's truly important and give it the full force of concentrated thought and energy. Focus is not just about concentration during work hours. It's about having a clear sense of purpose that guides every decision. It's about saying no to good opportunities so you can say yes to great ones. It's about understanding that you can do anything, but you cannot do everything. And the key to extraordinary results is extraordinary focus. This level of focus makes other people uncomfortable because it highlights their own scattered approach to life. When they see someone who has clarity of purpose, who knows exactly what they want and why they want it, who can resist distractions that derail others, it makes them question their own priorities. It makes them wonder if they're majoring in minor things, if they're busy but not productive, if they're moving but not progressing. A strong mind has learned that attention is the currency of achievement. Where you focus your attention determines your experience. Focus on problems, and problems multiply. Focus on opportunities, and opportunities expand. Focus on what's wrong with the world, and you'll find plenty to confirm your pessimism. Focus on what's possible, and you'll discover resources you never knew existed. The sixth characteristic of a strong mind is that it has developed an unshakable belief in its ability to learn, grow, and adapt. It doesn't say, I can't do that, or I'm not good at that, or that's not for someone like me. Instead, it says, I can't do that yet, or I'm not good at that yet, or I haven't learned how to do it well how. This small shift in language represents a massive shift in mindset. A strong mind understands that intelligence is not fixed, that abilities can be developed, that what you are is not what you have to remain. It embraces challenges as opportunities to grow rather than threats to avoid. It sees failure as feedback rather than defeat. It views setbacks as setups for comebacks. This kind of growth mindset is built through the deliberate practice of learning from every experience, especially the difficult ones. This commitment to continuous growth is intimidating to those who have accepted their limitations as permanent. When they encounter someone who is constantly learning, constantly improving, constantly becoming more than they were, it forces them to confront their own stagnation. It makes them realize that their problems are not permanent fixtures, but challenges that could be overcome with the right mindset and effort. The seventh characteristic of a strong mind is that it has learned to delay gratification. In a world that promises instant everything, the ability to sacrifice immediate pleasure for long-term gain is becoming increasingly rare and increasingly valuable. A strong mind understands that the price of success is always paid in advance, that the discipline you practice today determines the freedom you'll enjoy tomorrow. This isn't about being joyless or denying yourself all pleasures. It's about being strategic with your choices, understanding that every decision has consequences, and choosing the consequences you want to live with. It's about trading the good for the great, the temporary for the permanent, the easy for the meaningful. Most people want to have their cake and eat it too. They want success without sacrifice, progress without effort, results without process. But a strong mind has accepted the reality that life requires trade-offs, that you cannot have everything you want immediately, that patience and persistence are the prices of anything worthwhile. This willingness to delay gratification terrifies those who live for immediate satisfaction. When they see someone who can say no to momentary pleasures in service of long-term goals, who can stick to a plan when it gets difficult, who can maintain their discipline when others are indulging, it challenges their entire approach to life. It suggests that they too could have what they want if they were willing to pay the price in advance. The eighth characteristic of a strong mind is that it has learned to find opportunity in every situation. While weak minds look for reasons why something won't work, strong minds look for ways to make it work. While weak minds focus on the obstacles, strong minds focus on the possibilities. While weak minds ask, why me? Strong minds ask, how can I use this? This isn't naive optimism or positive thinking without substance. It's a trained ability to see beyond the immediate circumstances to the potential that exists within every challenge. It's understanding that problems are not roadblocks but stepping stones, that difficulties are not penalties but opportunities to develop strength, that setbacks are not endings but new beginnings. A strong mind has learned that life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. Every experience, whether pleasant or painful, contains lessons that can contribute to your growth if you're willing to look for them. This perspective transforms you from a victim of circumstances into a student of life, from someone who reacts to situations into someone who learns from them. This ability to find opportunity in difficulty is profoundly unsettling to those who see themselves as victims of their circumstances. When they encounter someone who can take the same challenging situation they're facing and find possibilities where they see only problems, it destroys their excuses. It reveals that the limitations they're experiencing may be self-imposed rather than externally determined. The ninth characteristic of a strong mind is that it has developed the courage to be different. It doesn't need approval from the crowd. It doesn't need permission to pursue its dreams. It doesn't need validation from others to know its worth. It has learned that the price of fitting in is often giving up what makes you special, and it's not willing to pay that price. This courage doesn't mean being difficult or contrary for its own sake. It means having the confidence to stand for something meaningful even when others don't understand or support it. It means being willing to be misunderstood in the short term for the possibility of being appreciated in the long term. It means choosing character over popularity, principle over convenience, truth over comfort. The world needs people who are willing to be different, who are willing to challenge the status quo, who are willing to say what needs to be said, even when it's not popular. But the world is also intimidated by such people. Those who have chosen the easy path of conformity feel threatened by those who have chosen the more difficult path of authenticity. Now, let me tell you how to build this kind of mental strength, because understanding what it looks like is only the beginning. The real question is, how do you develop it? How do you transform your mind from something that works against you into something that works for you? The foundation of mental strength is self-awareness. You cannot change what you're not aware of, and you cannot improve what you don't acknowledge. Most people live their entire lives without really examining their thoughts, their beliefs, their patterns of thinking. They accept whatever thoughts happen to drift through their minds as if they have no choice in the matter. But building a strong mind begins with becoming the observer of your own thinking. Start paying attention to the conversations going on inside your head. Notice what you tell yourself when things go wrong. Observe how you talk to yourself when you're facing a challenge. Listen to the words you use when you're describing your life to others. This awareness is the first step toward transformation. You'll probably be shocked by what you discover. Most people would never talk to others the way they talk to themselves. They're more critical, more harsh, more limiting in their self-talk than they would ever be with a friend. This internal dialogue is shaping your reality every single day. And if it's negative, limiting, or fearful, it's undermining everything else you're trying to accomplish. Once you become aware of your thinking patterns, the next step is to begin the process of mental conditioning. Just as you can strengthen your body through physical exercise, you can strengthen your mind through mental exercise. This means deliberately choosing thoughts that serve your goals rather than sabotage them. It means replacing limiting beliefs with empowering ones. It means feeding your mind with ideas that elevate rather than ideas that diminish. This conditioning process requires consistency and patience. You didn't develop your current thinking patterns overnight, and you won't change them overnight either. But every day that you practice disciplined thinking, you're building mental muscle. Every time you choose an empowering thought over a limiting one, you're rewiring your brain. Every time you focus on possibilities rather than problems, you're strengthening your mental foundation. The key is to start small, but start immediately. Don't wait until you feel ready, because you'll never feel ready. Don't wait until conditions are perfect, because they'll never be perfect. Start today with one simple practice. When you catch yourself thinking a thought that doesn't serve your goals, immediately replace it with a thought that does. Mental conditioning also involves surrounding yourself with the right influences. Your mind is constantly being shaped by what it consumes, so you must be intentional about what you feed it. Read books that challenge you to think bigger. Listen to people who inspire you to reach higher. Engage with ideas that expand your sense of what's possible. Distance yourself from influences that promote limitation, victimhood, or mediocrity. This is where you'll encounter your first real resistance, not just from yourself, but from others. When you start being selective about what you read, watch and listen to, people will notice. When you start choosing growth over gossip, learning over leisure, purpose over pleasure, some people won't understand. They might even feel judged by your choices, threatened by your growth, or abandoned by your evolution. But remember this, you cannot simultaneously fit in and stand out. You cannot please everyone and fulfill your potential. You cannot maintain the approval of those committed to mediocrity while pursuing excellence. At some point, you must choose between the comfort of conformity and the satisfaction of growth. A strong mind always chooses growth. The next element of building mental strength is developing emotional regulation. This doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending you don't feel them. It means learning to experience emotions without being controlled by them. It means understanding that feelings are information, not instructions. Just because you feel something doesn't mean you have to act on it. Most people are slaves to their emotional states. They let their moods determine their actions, their feelings dictate their decisions, their emotions drive their behavior. But a strong mind has learned to step back and observe emotions objectively. It feels the fear but acts anyway. It experiences the anger but responds thoughtfully. It acknowledges the disappointment but keeps moving forward. This emotional mastery is developed through practice. Start by simply noticing your emotions without immediately acting on them. When you feel angry, pause and ask yourself what this anger is trying to tell you. When you feel afraid, examine whether the fear is protecting you from real danger or just keeping you in your comfort zone. When you feel sad, explore what this sadness reveals about what matters to you. The goal isn't to eliminate emotions, but to respond to them wisely. Emotions contain valuable information about your values, your needs, your boundaries. but they're terrible decision makers. A strong mind learns to feel deeply but think clearly, to honor emotions without being enslaved by them. This emotional stability is profoundly unsettling to those who live at the mercy of their moods. When they encounter someone who can remain calm in crisis, focused under pressure, and rational when everyone else is losing their minds, it makes them realize how chaotic their own emotional lives have become. It shows them that inner peace is possible, that emotional stability can be developed, that they don't have to be victims of their own feelings. Another crucial aspect of building mental strength is developing the ability to think long-term while acting short-term. A strong mind can see beyond immediate circumstances to future possibilities. It can envision what could be while dealing practically with what is. It can hold on to a compelling vision of the future while taking the necessary steps in the present to make that vision reality. This long-term thinking allows you to make decisions that might not make sense to others in the moment, but will prove wise over time. It enables you to invest today for returns you won't see for years. It gives you the patience to plant seeds that won't bear fruit immediately, but will create abundance eventually. Short-term thinking is the enemy of success. It focuses on immediate gratification, quick fixes, and easy solutions. It asks, what's in it for me right now, rather than what will this lead to over time? It chooses comfort over growth, pleasure over progress, easy over meaningful. And unfortunately, our culture encourages this kind of thinking at every turn. But a strong mind resists this cultural conditioning. It understands that anything worthwhile takes time to develop. It knows that the best things in life are not the fastest things, not the easiest things, but the things that require patience, persistence, and long-term commitment. This perspective is frightening to those who want everything now, who believe they shouldn't have to wait for anything, who think success should be immediate and effort should be minimal. Mental strength also requires developing what I call philosophical sophistication. This means having a clear set of principles that guide your decisions, a well-thought-out philosophy of life that helps you navigate challenges and opportunities. Most people operate from a confused mixture of inherited beliefs, popular opinions, and emotional reactions. They don't have a coherent framework for making decisions, so they make choices randomly or based on whatever influence is strongest at the moment. A strong mind has done the hard work of examining beliefs, questioning assumptions, and developing a personal philosophy based on wisdom rather than wishful thinking. It has clear values that don't change with circumstances. It has principles that remain constant regardless of what others are doing. It has a mission that provides direction when the path becomes unclear. This philosophical clarity is intimidating to those who live in constant confusion about what they believe and why they believe it. When they encounter someone who has clear convictions, consistent principles, and unwavering values, it highlights their own philosophical poverty. It makes them realize that they've been drifting through life without a compass, following whoever seems most confident without examining where they're being led. Developing this philosophical foundation requires serious study and reflection. You must read the great thinkers, examine different perspectives, and engage with ideas that challenge your current beliefs. You must be willing to discover that some things you've always believed might be wrong, that some opinions you've held might be unfounded, that some assumptions you've made might be limiting your potential. This process of philosophical development is not comfortable. It requires intellectual honesty, emotional courage, and the willingness to change your mind when presented with better information. But the result is a mind that cannot be easily swayed, manipulated, or confused. A mind that has strong foundations and clear directions, a mind that knows what it stands for and why. The development of mental strength also requires what I call productive paranoia. This isn't negative thinking or expecting the worst. It's the intelligent recognition that success requires preparation, that good times don't last forever, that the unexpected is normal and should be planned for. It's developing contingency plans not because you expect things to go wrong, but because you want to be prepared if they do. Most people are caught off guard by predictable problems. They act surprised when challenges arise, shocked when setbacks occur, devastated when plans don't work out exactly as expected. But a strong mind anticipates difficulties, prepares for obstacles, and builds resilience into every plan. It asks, what could go wrong, and how would I handle it? Not from a place of fear, but from a place of wisdom. This kind of preparedness is unsettling to those who prefer to live in denial about potential problems. They want to believe that if they don't think about difficulties, difficulties won't arise. They mistake planning for problems with expecting problems. They confuse preparation with pessimism. But when unexpected challenges do arise, and they always do, they're amazed by those who seem to handle them effortlessly. The truth is, it's not effortless. It's the result of mental preparation, of thinking through scenarios in advance, of developing the inner resources needed to handle whatever life presents. This kind of mental preparation doesn't make challenges easier, but it makes you stronger and more capable of rising to meet them. Building mental strength also means developing the ability to handle criticism and opposition without losing your center. A strong mind doesn't need everyone to agree with it, approve of it, or understand it. It can stand alone if necessary. It can be misunderstood without being moved. It can face criticism without being crushed. This doesn't mean being closed to feedback or refusing to consider other perspectives. It means having enough inner security that you can listen to criticism objectively, take what's useful, and discard what isn't without your entire sense of self being threatened by the process. It means understanding that other people's opinions of you are not facts about you, that their approval is not required for your success, that their understanding is not necessary for your progress. The ability to stand firm in the face of opposition is terrifying to those who need constant validation. They cannot imagine functioning without approval, cannot conceive of moving forward without consensus, cannot picture success without universal acceptance. When they encounter someone who can operate independently of others' opinions, it challenges their entire approach to life and relationships. A strong mind has also learned the art of strategic thinking. It doesn't just react to circumstances, it anticipates them. It doesn't just solve problems, it prevents them. It doesn't just respond to opportunities, it creates them. This kind of strategic thinking requires stepping back from the immediate situation and seeing the bigger picture, understanding how current actions will create future consequences. Strategic thinking is the difference between playing checkers and playing chess. In checkers, you can only think one move ahead. In chess, you must think multiple moves ahead, considering not just what you want to do, but what your opponent might do in response, and what you'll do in response to that. Life is much more like chess than checkers, but most people approach it with a checkers mentality. A strategically thinking mind considers the second and third order consequences of decisions. It asks not just what will happen if I do this, but what will happen after that happens, and what will happen after that. This kind of thinking allows you to avoid many problems before they arise and to position yourself to take advantage of opportunities before they become obvious to others. This strategic approach to life and decision-making is deeply unsettling to those who live reactively. They cannot understand how some people seem to be in the right place at the right time so often, how some people seem to avoid problems that blindside others, how some people seem to have opportunities fall into their laps. The answer is strategic thinking, but recognizing this would require them to acknowledge their own reactive approach to life. The development of mental strength also involves learning to manage your inner dialogue with the same care you would manage any important relationship. The conversation you have with yourself is the most important conversation you'll ever have because it never stops. From the moment you wake up until the moment you fall asleep, and sometimes even in your dreams, this internal conversation is shaping your reality. Most people would be horrified if they could hear the conversations others have with themselves. The negativity, the criticism, the limitation, the fear-based thinking that runs through the average person's mind all day long would shock them. But they've become so accustomed to their own negative self-talk that they don't even notice it anymore. It's like background noise that they've learned to tune out, except that this background noise is determining their foreground reality. A strong mind has learned to become consciously competent in self-talk. It pays attention to the internal dialogue and intervenes when that dialogue becomes destructive. It replaces criticism with encouragement, limitation with possibility, fear with faith. This isn't about lying to yourself or denying reality. It's about choosing to focus on what empowers you rather than what diminishes you. This positive internal dialogue creates a foundation of inner strength that cannot be shaken by external circumstances. When your own mind is your ally rather than your enemy, when your internal conversation supports your goals rather than sabotages them, you become virtually unstoppable. This kind of inner alignment is what allows some people to accomplish extraordinary things despite facing ordinary or even extraordinary obstacles. The mental strength I'm describing also includes developing the ability to think systematically rather than randomly. A strong mind doesn't leave important outcomes to chance. It identifies the system's processes and habits that create the results it wants, and then it implements those systems consistently. It understands that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Random thinking produces random results. If you think randomly about your health, you'll get random health results. If you think randomly about your finances, you'll get random financial results. If you think randomly about your relationships, your career, your personal development, you'll get random results in all these areas. But systematic thinking produces systematic results. A strong mind has learned to think about life systematically. It doesn't hope for good health, it implements health systems. It doesn't wish for financial security, it creates financial systems. It doesn't dream about great relationships, it develops relationship systems. This systematic approach to life ensures that success is not a matter of luck, but a matter of design. This systematic thinking is threatening to those who prefer to leave things to chance, who believe that life is too complex to be managed systematically, who think that planning and systems take the spontaneity out of life. But the truth is that systems create freedom. When the important things are handled systematically, you're free to be spontaneous with everything else. Building mental strength also requires developing what I call selective ignorance. This is the ability to ignore information, opinions, and influences that don't serve your purposes. In our information-rich age, the ability to filter out irrelevant or harmful information is crucial. A strong mind is not a sponge that absorbs everything. It's a filter that chooses carefully what it allows in. This means being selective about the news you consume, understanding that most news is designed to create emotional reactions rather than provide useful information. It means being choosy about the opinions you entertain, recognizing that everyone has opinions, but not all opinions are worth considering. It means being discriminating about the advice you follow, understanding that free advice is often worth exactly what you pay for it. Selective ignorance is not about being closed-minded or uninformed. It's about being strategically informed. It's about recognizing that your attention is limited, valuable, and therefore it should be invested wisely. It's about understanding that everything you pay attention to is shaping your reality, so you must be very careful about what you choose to focus on. This selective approach to information is disturbing to those who consume information indiscriminately. They cannot understand how someone can be informed without being overwhelmed, how someone can stay current without being consumed by every trend and crisis, how someone can be engaged with the world without being enslaved by its chaos. A strong mind has also learned the power of questions. It understands that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask yourself. Poor questions lead to poor answers, which lead to poor decisions, which lead to poor results. But powerful questions lead to powerful answers, which lead to powerful decisions, which lead to powerful results. Instead of asking, why does this always happen to me? A strong mind asks, what can I learn from this situation? Instead of asking, why am I so unlucky? It asks, how can I position myself to take advantage of opportunities? Instead of asking, why don't I have what I want? It asks, what do I need to do to create what I want? These kinds of questions shift your mind from victim mode to solution mode, from problem-focused to possibility-focused, from external blame to internal empowerment. They direct your mental energy toward productive thinking rather than destructive thinking. They turn your mind into a problem-solving machine rather than a problem-creating machine. The habit of asking empowering questions is deeply unsettling to those who are addicted to disempowering questions. When they hear someone asking, how can I make this work? Well, they're asking, why won't this work? It reveals the self-defeating nature of their own thinking. It shows them that their problems might be perpetuated by their own mental habits, rather than by external circumstances. Mental strength also involves developing the courage to dream big and the discipline to start small. A strong mind is not afraid of big goals, ambitious visions, or seemingly impossible dreams. It understands that all great achievements begin as thoughts in someone's mind, that every breakthrough was once considered impossible, that the extraordinary is simply the ordinary taken to higher levels. But a strong mind also understands that big dreams must be supported by small, consistent actions. It doesn't just dream, it plans. It doesn't just envision, it executes. It doesn't just hope, it works. It knows that the gap between dreams and reality is filled with daily disciplines, consistent efforts, and persistent action.